speak up, and here's what he said.
Not really. No. Guys talked, obviously, amongst each other, but when something did happen and there was some second guessing and it got to Kenny Holland came down to the room and had this speech and supported Mike Babcock. It was a great speech, but that, to tell everybody in the room, if you don't like it, you could be traded, come up and see me be traded. So that was kind of the way that ended. But yeah, Nick Lidstrom wasn't going to do that. That wasn't his demeanor. Izzy, we won that year. I think Izzy played a year for him, maybe two, and it never got to that point there yet where he had really, started to be that person and that he turned into, Babcock, with the Wings. So, again, it was just the guys were so respectful, Datsuk, Zetterberg, and again, like so many others, they just shut their mouth and did what they were told.
I mean, look, everybody's piling on with Babcock. Yzerman, of course, then hired Babcock to be as the GM of the Canadian team, hired him to be the coach of the Canadian Olympic team. So there had to be some sort of relationship and respect there. There's not a lot of push from fans to bring Babcock back, and I don't know if any of this would influence opinions anyway, but I do know that the topic of our society's soft, and maybe he's an old school coach. Like the old school coach, old school coaches can cross the line, but old school coaches don't play as well in America, or I guess Canada, in 2019 as they used to.
Yeah, I didn't mind if a coach yelled and screamed at you as long as it wasn't personal. If they're yelling and screaming at you because you did something wrong and they're yelling, you're supposed to do it this way, I don't know why you're not. Okay, that's fine. But if the coach is yelling and screaming at you and then making personal attacks at you that have nothing to do with you, going the wrong way on a play or whatever, you made a mistake, then there's no point to that. It's not going to serve any purpose.
I've had we had a boss here once who was really, he was really confrontational. We've talked about him on the air, Bigby. We learned to work with it, right?
Yeah.
And it was, I didn't agree with everything he said, but it worked out reasonably well. In this new school world, one of my kids plays baseball for a coach who's pretty old school. But the one thing that nobody doubts is he loves his players, loves the kids. And I think he gets that message across to the kids. So he can be tough and old school and have some old school ways of doing things, but the players know that the coach loves them.
Well, whether it's as a player or as an employee, I've always appreciated the boss or the coach that would take the time to explain to you why they are the way that they are. And I've had coaches that have done that, and in the aforementioned boss that we had, it got to a point where it was really rough, but he would explain what the method was to the madness, and I got it, and I'll buy into it, and we did. And it just, you have to be able to get the respect of the people to have them follow you. Otherwise, you're just a tyrant, which sounds kind of like what Babcock turned into.
All right, let's go to Chase in Ann Arbor. You're on 97.1 The Ticket. Hi, Chase.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, Chase.
So I was listening to the podcast. A really good podcast, by the way. I recommend checking it out. But Ryan Whitney, Bissonnette, they were saying on the subject of, like, if, today's society is too soft versus he's just an old school coach, they both brought out specific examples of when they had, like, old school coaches that they had that would be super tough on them and would, get in their face and even sometimes not, fight, but be physical confrontationally. But to their, words, Babcock just took it over the line. Like you guys are saying, he would get personal, and it's not necessarily like the old school coach, but he would just take it too far.
Sounds like it. I don't. It's funny because, like, when I heard those Chelios stories, I was like, well, this isn't the worst thing I've ever heard. The Johan Franzen stuff,
that was bad.
And the question is, how much did they know about, the length of his concussions? We're all kind of learning more about concussions. I feel like we know a lot more now and how to sort of approach people with concussions than we did 5 years ago. Cut Babs a little bit of slack, but if you have a guy with a concussion, I'm sure you had to be told, hey, this is nothing to mess with. 248-539-9797. William is next. Hi, William.
Good morning. Good afternoon. I think this is about a combination of a few things. I think it's about effective player management. I think it's about accountability and public humiliation. And I think you can effectively manage people and players and hold them accountable without publicly humiliating them. Like Gator said, and I think, Gator, you said it really well, it's not about a coach being a screamer. Some of the best coaches that I've seen are screamers, but they're screaming instruction, direction, support, as opposed to publicly humiliating people. Personally, I think there's no place for it in the workplace or in the sport play. I think you can be very effective. You can hold players accountable. You can be success-driven without the public humiliation part. Why do you need that? It's not necessary.
William, I've heard coaches yell the following at players. What are you doing? When I hear that, I'm like, that is not coaching. That is not, you're not teaching a kid anything with that. You're not teaching a player anything with that. That's
public humiliation.
Public humiliation.
Yeah.
It is making sure that anyone within earshot knows it's not me, it's him. I mean, you have to explain when they do something wrong or repeat it. But I think what are you doing is just lashing out and trying to humiliate a person.
It can be, and if that's all it is, then it is. But it could also be used as you do that, and you have to follow it up with, okay, I said, what are you doing? And then explain to them what it is. Without the explanation, without building the player back up, it is bullying.
I mean, I guess it can be just a visceral reaction, but generally that's not it. Generally it's hey, it's not me, it's you. 248-539-9797. Tony on a cell. Hi, Tony.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
What's up?
I had 3 quick points. I don't know how to pronounce his name right, but Babcock did the same thing. You can look it up on
Colivacchio, yeah.
Carlo Cogliano.
He did the same thing to him. I also think that it's pretty well known. A very good friend of mine knows somebody well within the locker room. It's pretty well known that Zetterberg and him did not get along. And I think a lot of this happened after they were winning. So after 2009 and things started falling apart, that's when these things started kind of coming out. And it's sad to me because possibly we had the team. We still had the team. And it's possible that we could have won more or at least done better than first-round exits.
Well, there's a lot of pressure to win and even more pressure to stay on top once you do that. And when the Red Wings won the Cup in 2008, a lot of pressure to repeat, and they could have repeated. They came up a game short in 2009, and I don't know if this was the genesis of what happened with Mike Babcock. Maybe it's the pressures of trying to stay on top or what. Now he hasn't talked about it yet. Mike Babcock, there's another side of the story, and I think that needs to be brought up. To be fair, what's his side of it?
I think you're right. I mean, look, do you think Chris Chelios was perfectly innocent in all these interactions?
No.
I mean, I would imagine there was some reason that some of this stuff was going on. If Babcock was benching him solely to show he was in charge and choosing the game that Chelly cared about the most, the Wrigley Field game, that seems kind of bogue.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when you're talking about Hall of Fame players, and with the Modano situation, that's a Hall of Fame player. Chris Chelios is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And things that would mean most to those guys, and you take those opportunities away, it just seems like, okay, even if you're upset with what happened a week or 2 weeks beforehand with a player that's whatever, you think you'd give them a little bit of leeway. Okay, we're playing the game outdoors at Wrigley Field. It's Chicago. Chelly's from Chicago. You'd think, all right, let him play that. Mike Modano's 1,500th game, let him play in the 15th. Nope, you're not going to do that? I mean,
listen, I'm sure it's well known throughout the league and the players what kind of coach Mike Babcock is, right, personality-wise. But yet he was chosen to coach Team Canada more than once, right? I mean, this is not like a newsflash, right? I mean, apparently it wasn't that bad enough. Didn't Steve Yzerman have him, pick him coach coach Team Canada?
Again, you got to look at, I guess, a timeline because Chelios kind of said the genesis happened after they were winning, right?
Yeah.
So back in that time when he was very competitive with the Ducks, and gets noticed, and then comes to Detroit and wins the Stanley Cup quickly. I mean, he's the hot name, and when you're dealing with only the elite players, I guess it's probably a different ballgame when dealing with elite players when you have a roster full of some elite players, some good players, and a lot of mediocre players.
And you don't think Toronto knew what they were getting when they hired him?
They had to if Shanahan was there.
Of course, they knew.
It's Karsch and Anderson, open lines, 248-539-9797, 97.1 The Ticket.